So, who wants to see my garden? All right, so I have a blended landscape garden where we have some wonderful flowering azaleas. This right here is Forsythia. It's green now, but in the first days of spring, back in February and into March, these are covered in beautiful, beautiful yellow flowers from top to bottom. Over here, we have another Forsythia, because you pair them. This right here is a growing China rose that I transplanted from the other side of the garden. But this one was almost dead, and I transplanted it and then gave it some stuff called Super Grow, and I'll be darned, it stimulated growth, and this thing is going to bounce back. It is covered in little green little green leaves, and you can even see that's going to be a rose in maybe a month's time. Really pretty. And though these are green, these all here are azaleas of varying different colors and varieties. And when they are in bloom, they are just absolutely gorgeous. But I said earlier that I have a blended garden of landscape, like traditional flowers and green things. But I love useful weeds. I love things that you can eat and enjoy. So here's some more pretty flowers. This right here is our little stone bunny. A few years ago, Brianna and I owned a pet rabbit. And she was a Flemish giant. Her name was Barley. And this little rabbit of ours sits in our garden, which was one of her favorite places to be. Obviously at a house a long time ago. I'm kind of a crazy, let's move the camera around, kind of a crazy bird guy too. I love my birds. I love watching them out of my bay window. All right, let's go look at actually the stuff that you can eat. And part of my whole blended garden thing. I like things that are green, I like things that flower, and I like things that you can eat. And the squash, right here, the two yellow squash, they're straight-necked yellow squash, which is a summer squash variety, and the zucchini fit that bill. These four plants will all get to be about, 3 feet across, maybe even bigger than that, and they'll be covered in fruit. And if I can zoom in here, you can already see that though we're just barely in May, we've already got some wonderful squash forming. There's even some, let's tilt the camera down. There's a nice one there too. Beautiful. And there's nothing on the zucchini yet, but you can see these right here. Let's pan that down. There we go. These things right here, those are going to be blossoms and those will be fruit. And we'll have more zucchini than we know what to do with, but we'll certainly give it a try. All right, let's work our way around to the garden. Here's some more azaleas that I transplanted. The long-term goal is to have this hedge complete, so it'll be all grown up. I mean, these here are over 20 years old. These are enormous for azaleas. They don't really, in comparison, this thing is shoulder high on me and I'm 6'1", so that's huge. And I will insert a picture showing you what it was like in full bloom. But here's another azalea. And here's another azalea. They're of different varieties, as you can tell, but they're both beautiful. This here is my newest acquisition. This is a butterfly bush, and this is a purple giant. Let me tell you exactly what variety this is, if you have any interest in it. Miss Violet butterfly bush. And they are gorgeous. This is great, obviously, for butterflies, but pollinators in general. I'm a big fan of things that are good for pollinators. And these here are two crabapple trees. And when springtime first rolls around, these trees are covered in white flowers, and they're really great for pollinators. Now, the reason I call it a crabapple tree is because all apples do not grow true to seed. There's a big misconception. Every apple you've eaten has been grown from a pruning, right? Only about 1 out of every million apple seeds is edible, right? And so these trees were just planted, and they're pretty and they flower and they produce a tremendous amount of crab apples. Here, I'll show you a couple here if I get the camera on them. There, and this thing is loaded. It's loaded down with these. Let's see if I can show you. Yeah, there's a couple there, and it's just all over this tree. But they don't grow, they don't make like a Granny Smith, they don't make a Macintosh or anything really palatable. But they just make something that's super tart and really only good for juice and feeding the deers, hence a crabapple. But crabapple's kind of a catch-all for a failed apple. So they're beautiful, and they'll be great for the animals, they'll be great for pollinators and wasps. And I may even be able to press them for juice. You can make jam out of them, but you really have to sweeten them a lot. But other than that, not a lot of use. But they're real pretty, and the birds love it, and the bees love it. All right, we're kind of looking at the garden at dusk. So these are my raised garden beds, and I'm in the suburbs with an HOA, so I kind of have to, like, you know, hide things away. Eventually, we're gonna have a nice little arbor here, and a little tiny fence that wraps around and makes this kind of more of like a private little secret garden. All right. These are all tomato plants. These 4 up front, I think they are a golden variety, so they're a yellow tomato. And then back here we have more of a traditional like plum variety. Let's see here. Well, we've got a mix of them actually. So this one here is called the Park's Whopper. So this plant is going to get huge. It's going to make tomatoes big as your hand. I mean, they'll really be just incredibly large. And then a couple of these others, I'll have to go back and refer to my diagram, but we've got kind of a plum Roma style tomato. We've got the Park's Whopper. We've got the golden ones. We've got a pear. What's the one that Brianna loves? Yeah, this is a yellow pear. This one here is called a yellow pear tomato, and she loves them, so I made sure to grow them. This variety here, and it's already got some, where'd they go? There were some little tomatoes on it I saw earlier today. I just strung these up this morning. Here we are. There we go. Right there. There we go. You can see those perfect little tomatoes right there. This is called the Mexico midget, which is a funny name, but it produces, the tomatoes really won't get much bigger than this size. They stay small and they get very sweet and they ripen quickly, and they're like the sweetest, tiniest little cherry tomato in the world. I mean, they're no bigger than the size of a dime, so they're fantastic. And then this last variety over here, this is a Sun Gold, which is a cluster style tomato. You can see it makes kind of little bunches, almost like a grape bunch. But yeah, those are fantastic. We have 2 peppers here. One's pretty pedestrian. This is a banana pepper. And then this here is going to be a Scotch bonnet. And those are for Chris. I hadn't told him yet. I was going to tell him when I showed him the garden. But it's been like a month since he's been by the house. And now that we're quarantined for COVID, I'm just going to tell you now. So, buddy, these are Scotch bonnets for you. And those are going to light your mouth up. This whole section here, it's late. I planted them late. But these are all going to be green peas, like Scheller peas. Those are going to be delicious. This plant behind the deer netting here is a purple bell pepper plant. And you can already see the purple bell pepper forming there. And we bought it more for Atticus. He loves purple. But they taste just like a green pepper. I'm not a big fan of the taste, but they'll be pretty as they can be. All right. We have 4 cayenne peppers. That's these here. And then we have several different varieties of bell pepper. This here is an orange bell pepper. So those will be really, really good. Okay. This little group here, these 2 rows, one's fuller than the other, but one was planted sooner than the other. These are Bok Choy, sweet, delicious Bok Choy. And we're coming up on needing to thin those suckers out here real soon. But those are great. And then this is, it has 3 names. This is Lacinato Kale, or Tuscan variety kale, but it's also popularly known in the United States as dinosaur kale, because it kind of looks like something from the Flintstones, you know? It's a very old variety, but it is a human cultivar. You know, it's something that we've hybridized over the years. Okay, so let's move along. Here's some more unique things in my garden. This right here, and it's very wilty because it's only been in the ground maybe a week or 2, is called Egyptian walking onion. And I know it seems funny to plant it here away from everything else, but when they spread, they take up a tremendous amount of space, right? And the Egyptian walking onion sends up a stalk, and at the top of the stalk, it has what looks like a garlic bulb covered in purple flowers. But as it dies back and withers, it falls over and plants that bulb in the ground, and up come, 5, 6, 7 more of these things every year. It spreads out like wildfire. This is exactly what I talk about. It's green most of the year. It flowers, which is beautiful, and then it produces not only a bulb that you can consume, but it produces green stalks that you can consume as green onion. So this is a useful weed, and it will take up a whole space. They are prolific when they go off. All right, let's go back to another flower here. This here is hydrangea, and this is a purple hydrangea. So they come out kind of light blue to begin with, and these things get massive. This is small, but it will be 6 feet tall and 4 feet across when it's done growing in a year or two. And then it'll keep growing for many, many, many years, but that's about as big as it'll get. But the flower clusters start out blue and turn purple, and they're just gorgeous. Again, great for pollinators, and it's just pretty year-round. Okay. Let's take a look-see here. This is my fig tree, and these are wonderful. I love figs, and this is specifically a Celeste variety. And let's see if I have any figs left over from last year that are maybe still sitting on the branches. I think the deer came and ate them all, but it will produce fruit later in the year. But the Celeste fig is specifically known for producing small but very sweet figs. So if you like figs, a Celeste is a very good variety to consider growing. All right, we're losing daylight. So let's scooch on over to my rosemary bush. It's just pretty a bog standard rosemary. Love my herbs. These things will take over. They have a lifespan of like max 5 or 6 years, but occasionally you'll find one that's quite old. So we'll see what this one turns into. But it's real sweet, real aromatic. If you were making oil infusions, that would be a fantastic rosemary variety. All right, these are looking kind of red through the camera, but they are hot pink, so I don't know what the color, something about them is iridescing in a strange way. But these are what are referred to as a China rose, and they are a very beautiful kind of a knockout style rose, and this one's prolific. It was twice as high last year. I cut it back, and that really helped stimulate some new growth. Something right now is kind of eating the leaves, and I don't know what it is, but it also doesn't seem to be hurting the plant because it's flowering just fine. And this, like all varieties of rose, will produce rose hips, and those are edible. They don't necessarily taste that great depending on the rose bush, but you can eat rose hips, and they're fantastic. And you can see it's just covered in more. I mean, this thing blossoms from now until September or October. It's incredible, and you can cut them and put them in the house, and they're really pretty. And I haven't noticed the deer eating them, and that's a real challenge. Okay, let's make it back to the backyard, and all my gardening space is back here. I would say this is essential for any backyard gardener. We have our composter, and this is great. It's got 2 sides to it, so I can have one batch finishing while I have another batch starting. You turn it every couple of days. It's great. The one key with compost to keep in mind is that you need like a 10-to-1 or even a 30-to-1 ratio of nitrogen to carbon. Carbon being things like newspaper, paper, cardboard, straw, things that aren't nitrogen rich. Nitrogen rich would be all of your house scraps. A lot of people think that compost is just house scraps, but you actually need that carbon to help break it up. All right, so we have a couple different varieties of strawberry, which are exciting as they come to fruit. These are the new plants this year. And then this plant here that actually has a strawberry on it, they're little tiny strawberries, but they're tasty. We planted this plant 6 years ago at our old house. And I dug it out of the ground and took it with me because I just couldn't stand the idea of it not coming with me. I'd had it for so long, and they're fabulous. Last year, funny story, this hillside, this is a pumpkin plant. What kind of pumpkin plant? I have no idea. We bought a bunch of ornamental varieties of pumpkins, and when they were done, when the season was over, I busted them up and put them into my compost, and the seeds did not break down apparently, and they all sprung up in my garden beds. So I've been plucking the seedlings and sticking them in this hillside for erosion control, and as you can see, every little green flower, I've got about 20 pumpkin plants that are all going to take over. And there'll be like blue pumpkins and naughty pumpkins and big orange pumpkins and white pumpkins, and we'll just see which ones they are because I honestly have no idea. This here is a pickling style cucumber, which again, got 4 of them. You'll notice that this is not a traditional garden space. This is kind of a waste wash area. This is where a lot of rainwater wants to come through. We used to have some Leyland cypress here, but we had to cut them all down because they were old and diseased, and one fell down in my backyard. It was real scary. But all these creeping vines will help hold the soil together and produce fruit and food that we can eat, and hopefully save me some money on having to buy pumpkins this fall, but we'll be giving them away to family and friends too. All right, with the available daylight, let's check out the back deck. I have a nice little chive plant. These are great. I love my herbs. Fresh chives are a must. All right, in real quick succession, we have 4 basil plants, we have 4 dill plants, we have oregano, and then down here, my German thyme, which is just fabulous. Is this German thyme? No, it's winter thyme, sorry. I didn't buy the German thyme, I actually went with the winter thyme, and this is fabulous. Can't beat fresh herbs, they're so easy to grow, and these cedar boxes are amazing. And I feel like, just check the marketplace wherever you are. Somebody local makes them all over the country. They're fabulous. Here is another azalea bush. This is more of an Appalachian style azalea bush, what you would see in the mountains. It reminds you of like rhododendron, but it's not rhododendron. And it has these big, huge, beautiful pink flowers. I'll post a picture of those as well. Love them. Okay. This garden bed here with all of the trellising that I just put up to get today. This is bamboo that you can get from the hardware store, and it's held together with zip ties. And you can see it looks rickety, but it's actually really held together really solidly. These are all green beans. We've got Kentucky Wonder, and then we have a mix of white, purple, and green heirloom varieties of green beans. And they're all going to take off and just cover this thing. There'll be creeping varieties and bush varieties, and they'll all just kind of fill the space and grow like mad. Here are my 4 San Marzano style tomatoes. I use these for passata. I do a lot of canning with these, and I make a lot of pizza sauce, and the San Marzano style are really, really good for that. These I've had to put up deer netting. This is a raspberry plant, and it's flourishing now that it's got this netting protection. This raspberry plant here got eaten way back. I had to put some Supergirl on it, so hopefully it will come back. But if it doesn't, I'll just get another raspberry plant or make a cutting and root something from this that I will plant there. Save some money. Tiny little blueberry plant that'll be big next year, and another tiny little blueberry plant. I still have some space here at the end of the yard, and so I'm thinking of doing a stickerless variety of blackberries, but we'll see. Don't want to be too ambitious. All right. Last but not least, these bags here, as it's getting way too dark to see, these bags here are potatoes. Those are all going to be russets when they finally come to fruit. We've got some more green peas, my mint that I've had for 9 years, and then we have some more green beans spaced out here. When they sprout, I'll probably transplant them somewhere else. But yeah, oh, one last place. I almost forgot to point out. They're not up yet. But you see these 3 holes? These are going to be elephant's ears, and I'll put in a picture of the elephant's ears because they get massive. I mean, they really do. They're just fantastic. All right, so why do I garden? Why do I do this? One, I think it's something. It's good. It's a good thing to be able to do. It's a good skill to be able to have, because you never know when suddenly there might be some form of food scarcity. Not that I'm not some crazy prepper. I don't think the world is ending regardless of current events. But I think I weep for a generation that doesn't have the skills and these abilities to be able to grow their own food. Selfishly too, or I guess kind of more cathartically, I should say, I find it very soothing. You know, they actually, I was reading a study 2 weeks ago that there are little tiny organisms in the dirt that, as we inhale them and consume them and bring them into our bodies from just having our hands in the dirt, release all sorts of good endorphins and good chemicals in our bodies. And so the relaxing feeling that you get, the relaxing feeling that you have, as my neighbor's dogs bark at me like crazy, from working in the garden, working in the dirt, is in large part from that there's actually something chemically going on rather than just the comfort of being in your garden and working on things. It's something I want to model for my children. I want them to grow up thinking about and getting excited about the seasonality of fruits and vegetables and plants. You know, when we go to the grocery store now and you can buy a strawberry from anywhere in the world year round, that's incredible, because it means that you don't ever have to deal with the scarcity of not having it. But in some ways you lose the great gift and excitement of the seasonality of certain ingredients. I mean, I'm sure wherever you are, there's still some of that, right? Like on the coast of North Carolina, it's a really big deal when it's soft-shelled crab season, right? And I know that's an animal, not a plant, but when something comes to fruit and it's not something you get to have all the time, it makes it special. There's something to that. And I think that anticipation and building up that want, that need, that desire is powerful, especially when it does get to pay off. So, oh, hi, buddy. You want to come say hi?
Dada,
Yeah.
I want water.
You want water? Do you need some help with that?
Yeah.
All right. Family calls. See y'all later.